10 the time, BBC Radio Nottingham. That's the Carpenters and Please Mr Postman. So then, we're looking at dementia this week on the programme. Earlier on this week, you heard about the ward at the QMC, B47 this is, where they're trying to do things a little bit differently. And by doing things differently, they're now catching the attention of other hospitals and institutions around the country and around the world as well, who are thinking, OK, this is an interesting approach, something different in the way that they treat people with dementia. So you heard about that on the programme earlier this week. Yesterday, there was this test you can take as well to see if you've got the early signs of dementia as well. But there is no discrimination when it comes to dementia. Rich, poor, black, white, condition that can affect anyone. At the start of the month, it was announced that a guitarist from AC/DC, Malcolm Young, he had to quit the band because he had dementia and could no longer remember the group's songs. And earlier this week as well, former England cricketer Ian Botham revealed how he stopped going to see his father, who had Alzheimer's, because it got too upsetting.
I beg anyone, please don't judge unless you've been there, because it is horrendous. And to see someone that you had so much time for, spent so much time with, so much quality time with, he was fit, healthy, bright, clever, sportsman, father, grandfather. He would have been horrified to see himself. And I wasn't prepared to keep on looking at him like that and seeing this person that didn't even know who he was.
It's quite amazing, isn't it, really, listening to Ian Botham talking there. And it's a big decision to make, to think, right, no, sorry, I want to remember him how he was, not go and see how he is now. Well, listening to all of this, I have with me Nikola Voce from Carlton, whose husband Steve was diagnosed with dementia when he was 52. He's a well-known voice in Nottingham, presenting radio shows on the likes of Radio Trent, Saga and Gem.
Sing, baby, sing! Sounds good to me. 5:25 in the Great East Midlands, solid gold Gem AM from 1975 with the Stylistics. Sing, baby, sing. And Cliff Richard, wind him up, let him go, just like that little toy on the advert with the batteries run down. You know the one I mean?
Go on.
What?
Show us your belly button.
Oh, you behave yourself when you're ready. Gem, hold on!
Well, that was Steve well and truly in his prime, as I say, diagnosed with dementia. It was about 8 years ago, was that right?
Yeah, eight, 9, yeah.
And how is he now?
I would say he's quite very late stage, really. He's recently stopped walking, which was his favourite pastime. Whilst being ill, he just enjoyed walking about the home. That was his main entertainment for the day, really. So since he's stopped walking, it does look like he's taken quite a nosedive in his health, really.
Mm. And you'll go to see... He's in a home, you mentioned.
He is, yes. He's been there for 3.5 years now.
Right. And for you personally, at the moment, you've just been telling me you've had a hip op.
Yes.
Not hip hop, hip op.
Yeah.
Obviously means you can't drive, so that's restricting for you, I would imagine. You're still managing to get to see him, but you've got even more on your plate now.
Yeah, definitely. But friends and family have been extremely supportive. I've got one friend brought me here today, and another one taking me to see Steve straight afterwards. So, yeah, they've rallied round.
Right. Is that every day you go and see him?
No. Basically, Deborah and I sort of share visiting alternate days, and there's probably one day a week where he doesn't see anyone.
What do you think of what Ian Botham was saying there a few moments ago about it's a huge decision to make, and I know he was saying, don't judge me, don't judge me. It's an interesting thing to talk about, though, isn't it?
It is. I have fairly strong feelings on that because whilst I understand the sentiment of it, having been through that barrier of seeing the changes in someone, the fact that I love him so much, I just think, well, he still needs me no matter how difficult I find it to be. And also I've got the example of my mum, who first saw him when he went into the home, and she found that really difficult, and she's perhaps not a natural coper, I might say. But after she'd been a couple of times, she's really come through that, and she's a great support for him as well. So you can get over that initial period of what you might think to be the case, and just work with it and get beyond it, really. Yeah,
because it is a very personal thing at the end of the day. I can kind of understand where he's coming from, and presumably there would be other people. He would know that there are other people going in to see his dad as well.
Yes, I suppose so. Yeah.
But it is each to their own at the end of the day. And
I don't know how Ian feels, and perhaps if I felt like him, I might have to have made the same decision. So yes, I wouldn't judge him on that wholly. It's just that I feel you can perhaps get over what you might think about it initially.
So going back to that early first diagnosis, what kind of help did you get then?
Well, very little. I mean, I didn't really know what to expect. So it is with hindsight that I say this, that there really wasn't much out there. There was a support group that I managed to find that was wonderful it was only monthly, so I felt like I could have done with it more often, but there was a health representative from the NHS and there was a social worker. So actually, looking back, we were really spoiled. We sort of had access to information from them, direct from the horse's mouth, if you like, and also the carers who had sort of more on the ground information from their own experience. And I found that group really invaluable, and I met friends there that I've stayed friends with ever since, really, and they continue to be a support to each other. So I think carer groups are really quite crucial.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like you were the one having to go out and find that yourself.
At that time, I certainly was. I didn't get given a pack of information or guidance on anything, really. I was just web searching and questions asking if I did see anyone.
See, the whole web searching thing opens up a real can of worms, doesn't it? I mean, we all know that for any kind of symptoms or anything you're looking at. So in some ways, did that become more of a worry in some ways?
Yes and no. What I found was very lacking was local information. You can research anything generally on dementia types, and you can find out different information about the one you're particularly interested in, but it's all just very general. I wanted to know what support is there in Nottingham. I thought, with it being a city, surely there's plenty of things out there that I just need to find, and there wasn't. So that was why I started my own website, to try and reach people in perhaps a similar boat. I know the numbers are still low for younger age dementia, but any age really has similar problems, so I would have connected with anyone.
Yeah. So in terms of advice for other people, what would you be saying to them? What do they need to do to try and find that extra bit of support?
I think you probably need to have a list of questions that you want to ask any professional that you meet with in advance, because your head might go blank within any appointment. So if you've got things on your mind, don't think there might be another opportunity to ask, because there may not be. So you want to splurge everything out, every opportunity you get to ask things, because actually you don't see professionals that often. Once we had the diagnosis, that's it, months passed till you see someone again. So
yeah. That's a really good point. I can imagine as well, you have these appointments, you come away, and maybe later that day or maybe the next day that you'll be thinking, I should have asked X, Y, Z.
Yes.
So try and write things down as best you can.
Yeah, and perhaps find creative ways to ask things. If you're perhaps with your loved one that you're worried about upsetting them, you could perhaps write a little note and leave it with them and ask them to contact you back with the information or whatever. So there could be ways around that sort of difficulty.
Yeah, good point. Okay, we'll come back and we'll talk some more in a few moments' time, and you'll hear from a dementia support worker as well with some more advice as well. You want to get in touch on this? Of course you can. 9343434. You can text as well, not to any message, 81333. It's BBC Radio Nottingham. It's the Rolling Stones. Let's spend the night together. 10:25, BBC Radio Nottingham, looking at dementia this week on the programme, particularly to do with the kind of support that's available to you. You've heard from Nikola Voce, and already got some messages in, actually. David in Clipston says, such a terrible thing, dementia, watching the person that you love get so frustrated with everyday things. Can you remember that time with Steve when he was getting frustrated? And what was it in the very early stages of his own dementia? You remember?
Yeah, I've actually got a couple of video clips that I was taking because I was interested in how the journey would be, and I knew it would be good to look back on. So I can think of one where he was trying to read a note that I'd written for him for what was happening today and what was happening tomorrow. So I'd probably put too much information on the first time and reduced it to like just 3 words, sort of today is, and he was just really struggling to read it, and just seeing that level of frustration, and I was trying to support him in that and help him to read it whilst not obviously telling him the answer. But yeah, it's a difficult one because it's not something you can learn to deal with, because you're unlearning rather than learning.
Yes.
So there's no scope there to improve, really.
It must be difficult for you though to see him get so frustrated like that.
Yeah, thankfully he's a calm man anyway, so he was frustrated, but he coped with it really well.
Yeah. Margaret in Mansfield says, recently lost my husband to dementia, and what Ian Botham says is true. I didn't want my grandchildren to see him in the state that he was in. He wasn't the person they knew. It's not just me it affected, it was the whole family, friends and neighbours as well. Thank you, Margaret, for the call on that. Well, let's just pick up on the notion of support and explore what kind of support there is. Ian Hind is a dementia support worker from the Alzheimer Society. If I needed some help now, what kind of support would I get?
Yeah, good morning, Mark. There is a lot more support now. For instance, if somebody gets a diagnosis, we're actually there now at a lot of the memory clinics. So, as you can imagine, that there's a small window of time to have a conversation with a professional, and they will give as much information as they can. But then they're invited to come and see us at the Alzheimer Society straight after, and we'll meet with them and basically talk through the emotional things, how they feel, and actually give them an information pack and a dementia guide so they can start understanding what does it mean, what do the words mean, and what support is there for me.
Because Nicola there was describing how things were 8 years ago. Are you saying there have been strides made then in the last few years to improve support?
Yeah, definite strides forward. I mean, there could always be more support, but I think what we're doing is really good. As well as having that opportunity to meet people at the point of diagnosis, we have memory cafes, carers groups, carers information programs where carers can actually come and get knowledge and get coping strategies and learn ways of sort of supporting the person they care for, as well as actually supporting themselves.
And in terms of practical support, what is there? I mean, financial support included?
Yeah, I mean, we guide people through the financial support. I mean, people can be looking at accessing benefits, both the person living with dementia and the carers, and also actually planning ahead financial things, because people might be worried about what may happen if they can't make decisions with finances, or what will happen and with wills and that. So we can sort of point people in the right direction as to what to do.
And what about the decisions when it comes to leaving home? Because Nicola's been describing there how with Steve, he's in a home now, and often it does get to the point where people are thinking, right, okay, I need some extra support. How are you able to help ease that kind of transition?
Yeah, we're there to talk. We take, that's a call that we take a lot over the phone, or we go out and see people at home and talk through the options. Make sure people are aware of what extra support they could have at home, because somebody might want to remain independent at home. And a carer needs to know what there could be to help them continue to do that. But then if they are at a point of making a difficult decision, then we can sort of help them work with social services if appropriate, to look at what sort of homes and longer term care that there is out there for them.
So how do people make contact with you? Is that through a GP? Do they just ask for help from a dementia support worker?
Yeah, well, they can just pick the phone up and give us a ring. So we've got an office here in Nottingham and an office in Mansfield and Bassetlaw as well, and people can just pick the phone up and ring us. For some people it is hard, it's confidence and knowing who to talk to. So, I mean, GPs know about us and the consultants know about us, so they should hopefully be pointing people towards us now. So,
Nicola, can you remember the time, I'm guessing it probably wasn't just one day where you thought, right, he needs extra support and it's time to start thinking about a home for him? It would have been a build-up to that, I
There was
presume.
a build-up, and actually when he did go in the home, I was actually just all the way along. I've liked to sort of try and stay a few steps ahead of where we're at, so I thought, I think I'd better start looking, because maybe in a few months or whatever I had started looking, and it really, there was just a moment where I sort of snapped one weekend, and it was like, I really can't do this anymore. And I was grateful I had started looking, because I got a bit of an idea of what might be options.
Yeah. What was it like then when he actually moved?
Oh, horrendous. I wasn't upset when my child went on the first day of school, but leaving him on the day there was really, really difficult, and I'll never forget it.
A massive change, though.
Yeah, and it was still the right choice to have done.
Yeah.
And there are times in life that are harder to deal with than others, and that was just one of them. But it was best for him, and therefore best for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking about, are there any... You must need lighter moments, and you need your own life, your own space as well. How do you manage to do that and keep on top of everything else?
That's actually been quite a difficult one to do, because you don't know how long the journeys are that each stage you're at, and the intensity of them can vary. So I found myself sort of feeling a bit like, oh, you know, he's still my main focus and that. And I'd probably say the last few months I have allowed myself to sort of perhaps go out socialising with friends slightly more than I used to, definitely. But there's still always that sort of back of your mind, like almost don't have too much fun.
Always there.
Yeah.
Always
sort
there.
of, he's not having any fun, so why should you almost?
Yeah.
But yeah, I do know I need to have downtime as well, because he's just always on my mind.
Yeah,
really.
of course. You gave some really good advice about, writing a list when you go and see a doctor, hospital appointments, things like that. Write a list of questions and the ways of doing that as well. Ian, what would your advice be? Because there may well be people listening to this thinking, yes, all right, we've had that early diagnosis, or I think I might have spotted the early signs of something here. What would you say to them?
Okay, well, if someone spotted the early signs, if someone's worried about their own memory or worried about someone they love or a friend, they should be going to see the GP first, because that's a starting point. If anyone's not sure, they can get in contact with us and we'll guide them through that. But talking to the GP about the concerns, the GP will do some simple tests, maybe try and rule out anything else, and if they don't get to the bottom of it, then they'll refer them on to a specialist. And again, I think Nicola's advice was fantastic there, in the fact that even at that point, it's a chance to write things down. Someone who's supporting someone that's worried about their memory may feel like they're betraying someone in trying to sort of tell a GP. So if you can write it down, and so you've got the information that you can pass across, then I think that's a really good strategy, Nicola, definitely.
Thank you both for coming in. Really appreciate it. Nicola, great to see you. And Ian, nice to see you as well. Thank you very much. Tomorrow morning, by the way, from 9 o'clock, any questions that you have about dementia, anything at all, an expert will be in the studio with me answering your question, your concern as well. You can give us a call now, actually, 934 3434. You can give us a call just before 9 tomorrow morning as well. I'm sure it'll be a busy one. That's tomorrow, BBC Radio Nottingham.